A woman drives into a nowhere town, and vanishes from every radar. Before that, a gang tried to intimidate her. They left with bite marks and broken pride. But what they didn't know. She wasn't running from them. She was leading them. Behind the wheel, a former military dog handler. Beside her, 2 trained Belgian Malinois with a kill switch for a command. What begins as a roadside incident unravels into a buried mission, a classified betrayal, and a man who was supposed to be gone forever, texting from the dark. And when the dogs start remembering what the humans forgot, the truth comes hunting. But before we begin, write in the comments where you're from. I'm curious to see how far these stories can travel. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new captivating tales. Let's begin. Jody Miller never cared for goodbyes. She'd seen too many, some whispered through gritted teeth under the stench of sand and gunpowder, others sealed with a body bag zipper under desert moons. Now she let the road do the talking. And the only 2 beings she ever trusted to watch her 6 were curled up in the sleeper cab behind her, breathing steady, dreaming of another war. Ranger and Diesel, Belgian Malinois, born and blooded in Kandahar, survivors of blasts, snipers, and betrayal. When the government offered to retire them, Jody told them, "You send him to a kennel, you'll need to dig 3 graves." So they rode with her. 1,000 miles of asphalt under their paws, their ears always up. Silent warriors, like her. It was near sundown when she pulled the rig into Big Tex Fuel and Diner, right off Route 80, a mosquito-bitten stop in Oklahoma near the town of Red Creek. She cut the engine, stretched her spine, and lit a stale cigarette, habit, not pleasure. Ranger and Diesel were already at attention. Something wasn't right. And then came the chrome. Steel Rain. A biker gang that wore American flags on their jackets and hate in their eyes. They rolled in like a bad dream, oil-stained boots, cigarette ash, laughter that cut like barbed wire. They saw Jody, alone, and circled like wolves around a fire. One leaned close. "What's a lady like you doing in a rig that size?" Jody didn't answer. "Got yourself some mutts there," another sneered, peeking into the cab. "They bite?" Jody looked at him. Calm. Quiet. Then whispered one word. "Guard." Like lightning in a bottle, Ranger leapt from the cab with a growl that scraped the air. Diesel followed. They didn't bark. They didn't need to. One went low. One went high. And the lead biker? He hit the ground so fast he left his breath behind. No blood. Not yet. Jody didn't want it that way. She called them off. Heel. They froze. On command. Like statues made of war. The bikers backed off, some laughing to save face, but none of them smiling for real. Jody filled up, paid cash, and climbed back into the cab. She didn't look back. But Diesel did. That dog always knew when death was still watching. 10 miles later, the sun gone and the stars just blinking awake, she saw the headlights again. Same bikes. She didn't panic. Didn't speed. Instead, she signaled right, pulled into Ruby's roadside grill, a little neon-sick diner clinging to the edge of nowhere. Parked by the back, behind the generator hum. She waited. They came in slower this time. Smiles painted on, but the air was tight with lies. "Hey, didn't mean nothin' back there," one of them said, stepping close again. "Buy you a burger?" Jody stepped out. Lit another cigarette. Nodded toward Ranger. The dog stood. Didn't growl. Didn't bark. He just stared. And the man forgot his own name for a second. "You boys still hungry?" she said. They weren't. They left. Like ghosts chased out of a graveyard. Later that night, parked at the Route 80 stopover, her rig humming quiet as a lullaby, Jody finally let her eyes close. Diesel snored soft beside her boots. Ranger kept his post, head on paws, watching the night through the cracked glass of the sleeper cab. And in that peaceful silence, her phone buzzed. One message. One name. It's me. Mac. I'm alive. Jody sat up. Mac. Captain Elijah Mac McConnell. Her CO. Her friend. Her everything. He died in 2015. She folded his flag with her own hands. And now, he was texting her. The dead don't text. That's what Jody Miller kept telling herself as the message glowed cold and cruel in the dark. She stared at the screen. Thumb hovered. Didn't dare reply. Because if it was real, it would mean everything she knew about that day in Helmand, about the explosion, the funeral, the folded flag and the cold speeches, was a lie. It's me. Mac. I'm alive. No punctuation. No call sign. Just Mac. And Jody hadn't used that name out loud in 10 years. Ranger lifted his head. A low growl pulsed in his chest. Diesel stirred but stayed curled. Jody looked out the windshield and saw nothing but moonlight and empty rakes. But Ranger's growl wasn't for shadows. It was for ghosts. Jody knew that growl. She got out of the cab, boots crunching gravel. Walked a slow perimeter around her rig, hand resting on the grip tucked behind her hip. Nothing. Not yet. But something had changed. The air was thick with static, the kind that always came before the first shot. Back inside, she replied to the message. Prove it. 3 minutes passed. Then 4. Then the second message came. You had shrapnel in your left thigh. I pulled you out. You screamed my name. Jody's knees almost buckled. Because no one, not even the VA, not even command, knew about the way she screamed for Mac while bleeding under that burning Humvee. That was buried. Buried deep. She sat there, silent. Diesel licked her hand. The next morning, she was back on the road before the sun cracked the horizon. Her manifest said Dallas. Her gut said nowhere. And her mind? It was already lost in Afghanistan. She kept playing back that last mission. The ambush. The flash. The explosion that split their convoy like an eggshell. Ranger and Diesel had survived, covered in blood. Jody had been pulled from the wreckage by someone. She always believed it was a medic. But the truth? Maybe it was Mac. She turned on the CB. Breaker 19, this is Road Ghost. Anyone got eyes south of Tulsa? Dead silence. Then. Road Ghost. We got eyes. You got tails. She jerked the mic up. Who's this? But the signal vanished. No reply. Ranger barked once. That sharp, certain bark he only used when he'd caught a scent. Jody looked into her mirror, and saw the bikes again. Steel rain. But this time, they weren't posturing. They were flanking her. She swerved onto a service road, miles off route, and pulled into an abandoned freight yard. Killed the lights. Parked the rig between rusted containers. Ranger was at the door before the brakes hissed. Diesel stood on the mattress like a coiled spring. She waited. 5 minutes passed. Then boots. 6 of them. No colors this time. No noise. These weren't showmen. They were wolves in black denim. Jody stepped down. Calm. Silent. You didn't take the warning, she said. One man stepped forward. Same guy from the diner, only now his grin was gone. We weren't warning. We were watching. Watching who? Not you. She nodded once. And whispered, guard. The freight yard exploded into chaos. Ranger took the first man in the leg, drove him into the gravel. Diesel leapt from the sleeper cab, spinning midair, and crashed into another. The men screamed. One drew steel. Jody moved faster, fist to throat, then knee to gut. Ranger dragged a biker toward the truck, snarling, refusing to let go. Jody pressed a boot to the downed leader's chest. "Who are you really watching?" The man coughed blood. Smiled, teeth red. "The ghost. The one you thought was buried. He ain't dead, Miller. But he ain't your friend either." Then he laughed. "Ask him what the whisper means." Jody's blood ran cold. The whisper. That was classified. Buried in reports even she never got full access to. It was the name of an off-the-books mission Mac led before he died. Only a handful of people knew the name. And every one of them was supposed to be dead or disappeared. Except now they were hunting her. Jody dumped the bodies behind a train car. Kept their wallets. Called no one. Then she got back in the cab and opened the message thread again. Mac. What is the whisper? 3 dots appeared. Then they vanished. No reply. But the silence told her everything. She looked at Ranger. At Diesel. Both dogs were shaking. Not from fear. From memory. They knew the whisper too. There's a kind of silence that only shows up before something breaks. Not loud. Not empty. Just wrong. That's what Jody Miller drove through. The rig hummed like a tired beast. Ranger had crawled into the sleeper, chest rising and falling in a rhythm that once meant safety. Diesel sat up front, ears twitching, eyes watching shadows that hadn't moved yet. Jody didn't touch the radio. Didn't make a call. She was thinking too loud for words. The whisper. The last op Mac ever led. Before he died. Before a Blackhawk went dark. Before names were erased and medals were handed out like hush money. She only knew one thing for sure, nobody who came back from the whisper came back the same. If they came back at all. She stopped in a trucker's lot off Route 42 near a dying town called Cutler. The kind of place where gas was cheap, but life was cheaper. Bought a burner phone. Sat in the cab. Dialed an old number from deep in her past. A voice picked up. State your name. She hesitated. Then said, Miller. Jody. Sergeant. A pause. Then, Miller's dead. Guess I got resurrected, she said. The voice softened. Jesus. You don't know what you've walked back into. Didn't walk. Got dragged. Where are you? Doesn't matter. Another pause. You know about him? Jody's grip tightened. Mac. A breath on the other end. Not relief. Fear. They say he's alive. But he's not. Not really. She hung up before the voice could say more. Then took her dogs for a walk behind the lot. Ranger pissed on a dead cactus. Diesel chased a rat into the shadows. Jody stared at the sky. A single blackbird circled overhead. The same damn bird she'd seen in Red Creek. In Tulsa. In the freight yard. She squinted. There was something wrong about the way it flew. Too straight. Too consistent. A drone. Watching her. She pulled her pistol and fired. One clean shot. The blackbird sparked and spun, crashing in the dust. Diesel returned, something clenched in his jaw. A tracker. There was no more hiding. Back on the road, Jody pulled off the highway near midnight and drove up a trail that hadn't seen tires in years. She reached the old cabin, Mac's place. Or what was left of it. Dust, ash, and rot. She stepped through the door and the smell hit her like a memory, bourbon, leather, burnt coffee, and blood. There were pictures still pinned on the cracked wall. Faces from her unit. Hers. Max. Ranger as a pup. One had a red X scratched through it. Hers. Jody backed out slowly, heart thudding. Turned, and found a man standing by the truck. "Thought you might come here," he said. She froze. "Mac?" He nodded once. Same eyes. Same build. But wrong. Too still. Too cold. His voice had no warmth. No soul. "You're dead," she whispered. "Not yet," he said. But I was close. Inside the cabin, Mac poured a drink. Sat across from her. "They said I died because it was easier than explaining what I saw," he said. The whisper was never about insurgents. It was about us. Us. Dogs. Handlers. People who wouldn't break. They wanted to see what happened when you took loyalty and turned it inside out. Jody stared. "You're not making sense." Mac slid a file across the table. Old documents. Photos. Satellite images. Blood tests. And then. A death certificate. Hers. "Your name's been scrubbed," he said. "You're legally dead, Jody." Her throat went dry. Mac leaned forward. "They're coming to finish the job. I've been buying you time. That's why the Steel Rain boys were sniffing around. They're not bikers. They're contract cleaners. Ex-Whisper assets." Jody stood. "Why now?" "Because someone higher up found out you weren't in the ground. And the Whisper has a leak." She stared him down. "You?" He smiled. "No. But I know who is." That's when the betrayal hit. From behind. The side door of the cabin kicked in. A flashbang rolled across the floor. Jody dove. Ranger barked. Diesel snarled. 3 masked men stormed in. Mac didn't flinch. Jody fired twice. 1 man dropped. Diesel launched onto the second. Ranger grabbed the third by the arm, dragging him outside. When the dust cleared, Mac was gone. So was the file. And the 4th man. The one hiding in the shadows. Jody shot him in the leg and pulled off his mask. Her heart stopped. "Lewis," she whispered. "Corporal Donnie Lewis. Her team's medic." She'd seen his obituary. Mourned him. Buried a patch in his name. He coughed blood. "They made me do it," he gasped. "Mac's not what you think." "What is he?" she shouted. But Lewis went limp. Diesel licked his hand. Confused. Lost. Like they all were. She buried Lewis behind the cabin, using her bare hands. Didn't speak. Didn't pray. Then she looked at her phone. One new message. From Mac. "Redemption isn't free. Meet me where we ended." Jody knew the place. The last battlefield. The Whisper's heart. The wind in Arizona doesn't speak, it howls. Like something old trying to claw its way back into the present. That's the sound Jody Miller drove toward. The Whisper's heart was in Arizona, tucked into the bones of an abandoned military facility codenamed Blackbird Nest, 30 miles west of Tucson. Officially decommissioned. Unofficially, forgotten. Buried in records. Exiled by shame. And now she was going back. Back to where she lost her team. Back to where Mac died, or claimed he did. Ranger was restless. Diesel whined in his sleep. They remembered the place, too. Dogs never forget what humans try to erase. Jody loaded every round she had. Taped a blade to her thigh. Slipped a photograph of her unit into her breast pocket. The photo was wrinkled, weathered, but the faces were still there. Mac. Lewis. Reyes. Her. All smiling like war was just another game they were winning. She hit the access road at 3 a.m. The gate was chained. She didn't slow down. The rig burst through in a shower of rust and steel. The place hadn't changed. Barracks still burned out. Hangars rotted like corpses. And the bunker, the one entrance to the underground facility, stood open. Wide. Waiting. She stopped the engine. Let the silence settle. Then whispered, "Guard." Ranger and Diesel leapt out. Flanked her as she walked through the opening. The air smelled of mold, diesel, and memory. Inside, the halls were still lit by flickering backup power, emergency reds and dying greens. Graffiti marked the walls. Mia. No mercy. Whisper lives. But beneath the decay, everything was intact. Like someone had been keeping it this way. Jody descended. Floor after floor. Until she reached the blast doors. A keypad blinked. She typed Mac's old unit code. It clicked. Opened. And revealed something she never expected. The lab was pristine. Surgical. Sterile. And filled with barking. Dozens of dogs. Caged. Monitored. Wired. Ranger froze. Diesel whimpered. Jody moved between them, looking at monitors. Heart rate. Brain activity. Implants. Tags that read names like, Vandal, Echo, Ranger, 2. Then a voice crackled through the intercom. "Welcome home, Sergeant." Jody turned slowly. The glass wall lit up. On the other side, Mac. Strapped into a chair. But smiling. Behind him stood another man. Bald. Clean. Wearing a private security badge. "You wanted answers," the man said. "Here they are." His name was Gray. Colonel Devin Gray. The architect behind the Whisper program. Disavowed. Then reborn in the shadows. Corporate Black Site Commander. "This isn't war anymore," he said. "This is evolution. You handlers formed bonds stronger than chain. You and your dogs, you synced. Thought as one. That's power. Untapped. So we tapped it." Jody clenched her fists. "You drugged them. We improved them," Gray said. "Mac was the prototype. He volunteered." Mac didn't deny it. "Why?" she asked him. "Because I saw the future," he said. "And it had your name on it." Jody's hands trembled. "You lied to me. You died, Mac." He nodded slowly. "I had to." Gray stepped forward. "And now we need you back. We need your dogs. Ranger's genetic line is exceptional. Diesel's aggression pattern is off the charts. You and your boys are legacy stock. Help us finish what we started." Jody spat. "You turned us into test subjects. We turned you into gods." That's when Jody drew her pistol. And shot the glass. Nothing. Bulletproof. Gray laughed. "I had a feeling you'd say no," he said. "But we didn't come unprepared." A panel opened behind her. And out stepped Reyes. Sergeant Mike Reyes. Her old squad mate. Dead. Or supposed to be. He looked tired. Scarred. But alive. "They told me you'd come," he said. "Told me you'd try to tear it down." "You're working for them?" Jody asked. He nodded. "Mac brought me in. Said it was the only way to keep the dogs alive. They're prisoners. They're soldiers, Jody." She shook her head. "No. They're victims." Ranger snarled. Diesel barked. Reyes took a step forward. Don't make me hurt you. You won't, she said. Because I saved your life in Helmand. And you still owe me. Reyes hesitated. Then dropped his rifle. Jody took the opening. Fired 2 rounds into the ceiling lights. Darkness fell. She gave the command, protect. And hell broke loose. Dogs erupted from cages. Ranger lunged. Diesel slammed into a guard coming from the side. Jody flipped a switch she saw labeled vent release. The room began to hiss with gas. She grabbed Mac by the straps. Come with me. But he didn't move. I belong here now, he said. This is my war. She looked into his eyes. Empty. Gone. Then stay buried, she said. And left him behind. Outside, the compound was chaos. Alarms screamed. Dogs scattered into the night, free. Some limped. Some bled. But they were free. Jody, Ranger, and Diesel ran. Dawn was breaking. And behind them, Blackbird Nest burned. 1 hour later, on the road again, Jody opened the envelope Reyes had slipped into her jacket before he vanished. It was a photo. Her team. And on the back. Redemption isn't free. But it's worth the blood. They say when a soldier dies, her war ends. But Jody Miller knew better. Some wars keep driving long after the flags are folded and the wounds scar over. Hers was still running. 18 wheels of vengeance rolling straight through the heart of America, 2 war dogs by her side, and no rearview mirror. What she didn't expect, was the final mile to look so familiar. She was back in Kansas. The flatlands that smelled like burnt wheat and broken promises. Where every town had 1 bar, 1 gas station, and 1 man who thought he could talk down to a woman in boots. She'd been stationed here once, long before the whisper, back when her life still had lines drawn between right and wrong. Now it was all blood and noise. Ranger stood on the passenger seat. Diesel paced the sleeper like a storm dog. They felt it. Jody had a meeting to finish. Not with Mac. He was gone now. Burned into ash beneath the ruins of Blackbird Nest, choosing shadows over freedom. He died twice, once in war, once by choice. No. This meeting was with the man behind it all. Colonel Gray. She parked at an old abandoned grain silo off Route 17. A drone circled once overhead and vanished. That was the sign. Gray stepped from the shadows, flanked by 2 mercs in black armor, holding rifles like toys. His smile was tight. Empty. You burned billions in assets, Miller, he said. And released over 30 enhanced canines into the wild. They weren't dogs, she replied. They were prisoners. He nodded. So you claim. And what now? You gonna shoot me? Make it a western. No, she said. I want you to know something first. Gray raised a brow. And what's that? Jody reached into her jacket. Pulled out a photo. Her unit. The one Gray tried to erase. Every single one of them was better than you, she said. Then she dropped the picture. And whistled. It wasn't a command. It was a signal. From behind the silo came the thunder of paws. All of them. All of them. Ranger. Diesel. And 20 more. The dogs she'd freed. They came like a wave of bone and fury. Gray's men raised their rifles. Didn't matter. By the time they pulled the triggers, Ranger was already airborne. Diesel went for the knees. And the others? They swept past Jody like ghosts with teeth. Gray stumbled back, gun drawn. But Jody didn't flinch. She pulled her pistol. You ever hear of poetic justice, Colonel? He fired. Missed. She didn't. Later, the field was silent again. Only the wind moved. Gray lay still in the dust. His empire undone by the very beasts he tried to chain. Jody holstered her weapon. Ranger limped back to her side, blood on his fur, but eyes sharp. Diesel lay next to a fallen merc, tongue out, tail wagging like he'd just fetched a stick. "Good boys," she whispered. The others, those wild, broken war dogs, stood in a circle, watching her. Waiting. "What now?" she muttered, more to herself than them. But she already knew. Weeks passed. The news called it a rogue militia skirmish. No mention of dogs. No mention of the whisper. The government denied everything. As always. But the truth was still out there. And so was she. She bought land in Montana. Wide. Remote. Open skies and quiet nights. Built a sanctuary there. For them. Not a shelter. Not a kennel. A home. Ranger healed. Diesel got old. A few of the others passed on, but not in cages. Not under needles. Under stars. Jody kept driving. Freight runs. Night hauls. Just enough to keep the wheels turning. She had enemies still. Ghosts with badges. Men in suits with quiet threats. But they never came close. Because the dogs were watching. One spring morning, Jody opened her mailbox and found a small package. No return address. Inside, a photo. Mac. In some distant land. Leaner. Eyes softer. A child in his lap. On the back. "You were right. Freedom is louder than silence." She smiled. Didn't cry. Just looked out across the land, where the wind whispered between pines, and said, "Guard." Ranger stood. So did Diesel. Old bones. Same fire. The road never ends. And neither did she. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.